Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Culture Connects Us Festival, Volume 2. My name is Camelia Harahap, and I am the Head of Arts and Creative Industries at British Council Indonesia, and I will be your host for today. So what exactly is Culture Connects Us Festival, or CCU2? CCU2 is an online festival organized by British Council as a response to support Indonesian communities to stay connected and to also access cultural and educational activities throughout the pandemic. We had the first volume back in May, and the second volume kick-started earlier this month, and will continue until the 20th of September. So do check out some of the other sessions while you're around. For today's session, we'll actually be talking about film and the filmmaking sector during these challenging times, to be specific. We will also be announcing an exciting program that has been brewing in the past couple of months with our partners Indocs and Scottish Documentary Institute. Today, I'll be joined by two very special guests, but before I introduce my guests and before we start, allow me to announce some of the general housekeeping first. So we will be recording the whole session. And by attending the session today, you acknowledge and have agreed to have your images and comments be recorded and possibly rebroadcasted for the future. Throughout the session, you can also raise questions by typing in the Q&A box. Please don't forget to include your name, your organization, and your city. I or someone else from the British Council team will then compile the incoming questions for the panelists. When the session comes to an end, you will be asked to fill in a survey, which will then be used to provide evaluation and feedback to the British Council team. We have also provided a sign language interpreter, and closed captions are available in Bahasa Indonesia. So for those of you who need the sign language interpreter, you can just spotlight the sign language interpreter's camera. There are also two sign language interpreters who will be able to take turns throughout the whole session. If you want to turn on your captions, you can just click on the captions icon on the bottom of the screen, and it will come up on your screen. And lastly, since this is a virtual event, please do understand that there may be some technical glitches or connection issues to be expected, but that's the joy of having online events, isn't it? So anyway, let's get back to our program and let's welcome our guests. Today, I have with me two leading film practitioners from Indonesia and also from the UK. We have Mindy Marahiman, the Interim Director for Indocs, an Indonesian organization that is committed to cultivate a culture of openness through documentary films. And we also have Anne Milne, an award-winning Scottish filmmaker and a mentor for the Scottish Documentary Institute's programs. Scottish Documentary Institute, or SDI, is a UK organization that specializes in documentary training, production, and distribution, supports filmmakers through its diverse program of international activities and high-quality training programs, and has filled in for Noe Mendel, who could not be with us today. Hi, Mandy, and hi, Anne. How are you today? Would you like to introduce yourselves? Maybe we can go with Anne first. I think she unmuted herself first.
Hello, hi. I'm really glad to join you today. I know you're in Jakarta and I'm in Scotland. And I'm sorry that we couldn't join you in Jakarta. That was going to be really a fun time, but I'm also very much looking forward to delivering the workshops via Zoom. I think that's going to be really interesting. So I'm an independent documentary producer and director, and I've been making documentaries for the past 10 years. And during that time, I've also been working with the Scottish Documentary Institute as a producer and also as a mentor. I've worked with Noe on a number of stories workshops, along with British Council in Pakistan, in Libya, also in Jordan. So that's been really a highlight for me, working with filmmakers and, you know, especially developing ideas and working with them throughout the process to create the film. So that's really exciting.
Thank you, Anne, and it's really great to have you here with us today. And
Yeah.
Mandy, would you like to introduce yourselves to the audience?
Yes, thank you, Cami. Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to Anne. My name is Mindy Marahiman. I'm the Interim Director for Indocs, an organization that aims to support democracy through the cultivation of engaging and powerful documentary films. I'm also a film producer, and I've been producing documentary films for about 5 years now. My latest documentary was released in the theater earlier this year and is now on Netflix. So I'm an interim director of Indocs starting from September until December. I'm holding the fort while Amelia Hapsari is moving on to her next adventure. I'm really excited to be here, to be working with British Council and with Scottish Documentary Institute, with Anne and with Noe. I'm really excited about our venture together with Indonesia Distanced Stories.
Thank you so much, Mandy, and it's also really great to have you here. So besides Mandy and Anne, we are actually also assisted today by Nine and Innova, who will be providing Indonesian Sign Language translation, as well as Dinda, who will be live captioning today's session into Bahasa Indonesia. So thank you so much for everybody who's involved in participating in to make today's event run smoothly. So anyway, I know that it's still quite early back in the UK, in Scotland, and it's already mid-afternoon here in Indonesia. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone is having a good time, and you know, it's a very laid-back session actually. We're going to be just chatting mostly about, you know, the filmmaking industry. And I just wanted to make sure, do you guys have drinks with you? I'm drinking a cup of tea right now. Not sure if you can see it because of the background. But how about you, Anne? Are you drinking anything? Do you have a beverage?
I am also drinking tea with milk. That is my favorite drink of all. I just love it. It gets me out of bed in the morning, just the idea of that cup of tea.
And it is quite early over there, isn't it? It's around 9 a.m.
It's just after 9 o'clock. Yeah.
And how about you, Mandy? Do you have a cup of coffee or a tea with you?
Yes, I'm having a cup of coffee and also a glass of water, just to stay hydrated.
Yes, it's really important to stay. So I also have a very big bottle of water with me. So anyway, thank you so much for being here. It's really great to have you both here. Today we're going to be discussing about filmmaking, especially filmmaking during this very, very strange time. And we're going to be trying to unpack some pockets of good practices in inclusive and or digital collaboration, collaborative filmmaking as well. So I have a few questions because I think I come from, I don't come from a filmmaking background. So I'm very much interested to actually see what's been happening with the film industry, especially with the global pandemic and the social distancing measures in place. What do you guys think, or what have you guys seen as the most maybe radical changes to the film industry so far? Maybe either Anne or Mandy can pick this up.
I can just start by saying that one of the, you know, when people are making films, documentaries, fiction films, they often want to premiere those films at film festivals. And it's a big part of the industry is going to those festivals and showing your films and then meeting other filmmakers, meeting funders. It's a big community, you know, event. And there's many documentary filmmaking festivals. So obviously during this time, many of these festivals have not been able to happen in real life, which I think is unfortunate for the filmmakers involved. However, for the audiences, it's meant that we can participate in those festivals from anywhere in the world, because many of these festivals now have gone online. So whereas before you had to travel and be invited to go to the festivals, which for a lot of people is expensive and is just not possible. So now we're able to, you know, maybe they're still charging some small amounts of money to watch those films, but it just means that those films are available to a much wider audience. So I think it's been a very interesting time for festivals to think about how they deliver the programs. And I've got a feeling that they won't go back to the original model, that they'll incorporate some of this new model alongside, you know, real life. Obviously Venice just had a festival in real life. You know, people did actually go to Venice and they walked the red carpet and so on. But I think that the overall the model will change for the better, I think. And because I think that also one of the, you know, things that many people have noticed is how the environment has improved quite a lot, and less people traveling, less planes, and so on. So I think a lot of us actually thinking that's a good thing.
So I guess picking that up from your points is there's been a bit of a democratization of film festivals and accessibility to film festivals for the audiences nowadays through like digital access, but also there's an environmental impact of people staying at home. So that's really interesting. And how about you, Mandy? What do you think?
I have to echo what Anne said, because film festivals now are growing their online presence by holding it fully online or by doing a hybrid model. And I think this hybrid model will stay because it is just so much more convenient to enjoy a film festival from your own home. But of course, it doesn't really replace the serendipitous meetings you have when you, after you watch a film, then you can discuss it with your with the people sitting next to you that you just know, or you can exchange name cards. But still, it's a luxury to attend more than one festival at a time, while before it was not possible. Like back in May, Cannes was having its festival, but also Sheffield Doc Fest. So it's really nice to be able to attend both at the same time and without traveling, so it reduces your carbon footprint. And also for Indonesian market, I think I read somewhere that there is a rise of paid subscribers to a digital online platform for films. And I think that's a good thing, because Indonesian audience were not accustomed to paying for what they see online. But now, because of the pandemic, they are paying for entertainment online. And that is a good thing, because now they are accustomed to paying for films, and that is good for the industry. I think the rise is about 14%, if I'm not mistaken. I read somewhere. So it's a very good number.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, there's been a rise in people subscribing to online digital platforms,
Yes.
Including, for instance, like Netflix or even the local homegrown ones as well. You also mentioned that even though there's been all these opportunities for us to access film festivals or new films, it doesn't really fill in the gaps of that kind of serendipitous social gathering.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people are trying to replicate that by, you know, I don't know if you guys are or have been participating in these type of watch parties. So where people like join in on a Zoom webinar or like through Google Meets, and they actually watch a film together through Netflix or through YouTube or from whichever platform. So that's a really interesting, I think, innovation, I guess, that kind of came out of this pandemic period. But also in Indonesia, there's been a new trend as well. Recently, there's a film cinema drive-through.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what you guys might think of that, because I guess from the perspective of the audience, of course, they're trying to really, you know, Indonesia especially is a market where people love to go to the cinema to watch movies, and they're really eager to have that kind of experiences again, but they're trying to figure out what they can do at this time. So what do you guys think about those type of innovations?
I think it's great, actually. The drive-in, I've noticed been having it in Scotland as well. Special events. It's not happening every night. It's maybe, you know, one or two specially programmed events that are happening in a large area outside of Edinburgh, and also rooftop, films in New York. They usually have their film screenings on, rooftops around the city, and they've actually been using drive-ins instead, and it's proven to be very popular. Of course, it's a big car culture, so I think it's fine if you have access to a vehicle. Not everybody has access to a vehicle, so it's really just available for those people. So, but I think the cinemas here have actually opened up now. Just recently they've opened, but I'm not sure if people are going. I for one, I'm not really probably going to go to the cinema for a while.
Yeah, and how about you, Mandy?
Yes, watch parties are exciting new thing that we can try. And also with watch parties, there's this sense of watching it together, like when you're in the cinema. Although, of course, it's still different, because in the cinema, you can feel people's reaction towards the scene, towards what's happening on the screen, while during the watch party, you are still alone, actually, in your home. But it's a nice alternative. I haven't been to the new drive-ins, because I know there are several opening up in Jakarta at the moment, but I haven't been to any, so I don't know how to comment on that. I mean, I would be glad to try, but a friend of mine who has tried said that the screen is not big enough and the sound is still not good enough. So the experience hasn't been able to replace the cinema experience. But as we know, the cinema in Indonesia is still not opened yet, and we don't know until when.
Yeah, you were talking about audience reactions, and I think in some cases people have really tried to use, for instance, like emojis, or even on Zoom, you could put up certain reactions like a hand applause or smiley face or whatever. But it is very different, I think, to real human interaction. And I think where we're going today with, the developments of the innovation for the film industry, it's an interesting start, but I guess there is going to be still some room for people to develop and find ideas on how they might be able to really replicate that in the cinema experience like we had before. So it's quite interesting. But kind of moving on along from talking about the audience experience for the film industry to, talking about the point of view as a filmmaker. How do you think during this time, the pandemic has kind of shifted your filmmaking practice or process?
Well, I think that obviously has been a problem, and so many productions have had to shut down because of the pandemic. because there's just a need for close connection, close contact with people during the filming process, whether that's working with crew together or just with the people, protagonists that you're working with in your documentary. So I know that a number of films that had started to be produced with SDI, especially had to shut down all during the lockdown period, because in Scotland here the lockdown was quite strict, in that we were only allowed to leave the house 1 hour a day for exercise and shopping, and the rest of the time we were asked to stay at home. So I know that some people who were working with protagonists abroad were obviously in contact with their the people they're making the film with and asking them to do some filming themselves. So that was one solution. If you can't film, you know, your protagonist, your characters in your film, then you can ask them. This is a documentary I'm talking about, not obviously a fiction film. You can ask them to, and then I think also you can do a certain amount of filming with Zoom or Skype or any kind of video conferencing. So it's a different way to potentially do an interview that you would have normally done in real life. Mm-hmm. I also was involved actually in a Zoom filmmaking. Well, it wasn't really, it was, we organized it through Zoom, but it's, we were inviting filmmakers all over the world to participate in a filmmaking venture called DOCMA, where 5 filmmakers come together and make a 1 minute each on a theme. And then those 5 films get put together into one film. So we managed to get 45 filmmakers to make a 1 minute. And so we ended up with 9 5-minute films. And those were on different themes that we thought were very, at that time, around the home, you know, themes like window, cupboard, door, bed, the kind of very domestic themes. So that was quite interesting, because most of the people who ended up making those films were making them from within the confines of their home. So that was quite exciting. And I know there have been a few other group endeavors all around the world, actually, of people making films together. So that was really quite exciting, actually, in the early days. I think maybe towards the end, people were kind of starting to get Zoom fatigue, you know, and you know, as you know, the easing, you know, as the easing began, people able to go out more. I think they were trying to get away from their computers. The computer screen has held us a bit captive, really.
Yeah, that's really true. I think in the earlier parts of the pandemic, you could really see there's been a lot of digital collaboration examples and processes in terms of filmmaking. I saw a lot of read-throughs as well that was like done through Zoom, but probably it might also work better for groups of people who are involved in a production who are basically far away from each other and who can't travel, because at the moment even Indonesia is still in lockdown. We're not able to like travel internationally for the time being. So what do you think, Mandy? How have you seen you know, the filmmaking practice and process shifted throughout the pandemic?
Well, it has shifted quite greatly. For instance, we know that several films that has finished shooting right before the lockdown and then was finished during the pandemic was forced to release the film straight on digital platform because they cannot wait for the cinema anymore. And then also several films that are shooting has to stop shooting, of course. And since then, several people have started shooting again, but of course with a very tight protocol, and they of course have to change the script because they cannot incorporate scenes that is not pandemic friendly. So they need to change the scenes, and also they need to shoot with less crew and less location because the pandemic protocol itself adds quite a big amount of budget in their production budget. But this is actually a great time for development, for people to do writing, to do their treatment, to do their research for documentaries. This is a great time to do that. So I think people can still be productive during this pandemic, but we just have to change our ways of work.
Yeah. I agree that it's the time that we all have at home, especially during the start of the pandemic, was actually a perfect time, because I think even for myself, I mean, last year, you get really busy in delivering events and traveling, and you actually don't have time for yourself. And I think a lot of people, especially artists, have really welcomed the time at home, because it actually means that they can start being productive in developing some of their new work or creating new art. And yeah, it's a really good opportunity to do that. But also just kind of touching on the whole digital collaboration space again. I think the fact that, you know, being physically distanced from each other really does encourage us to make good use of digital space. And I think it also opens a lot of opportunities. So projects that can now be worked on by people from anywhere in the world. In a sense, it's also kind of bridging access when it comes to mobility and as well as geographical reach. So as an example, even in some of the projects that the British Council has been supporting, you know, we as an organization, we're very much keen on supporting collaboration, cross-country collaborations between UK and Indonesia. And in the past, they would have to do it face-to-face, but now with digital and with the situation right now, they could actually do collaborations digitally. So we have one happening between the two UK and Indonesian artists in the performing arts sector, for instance, which actually will be also showing in this week's Culture Connects Us Festival. So talking about that and the kind of digital collaborative process, could you maybe share some of your own stories or experiences of, you know, digital collaborations, or how, you know, digital can enable more inclusive practices of collaborations in filmmaking?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, involved in a collective that's called DOCMA, and it's about making documentaries together. And we have actually been running this for, since the last 4 years through a group called Doc Club. But we also work with festivals in Scotland and run workshops with the kind of the concept of DOCMA. So it's about making films together, usually on a theme. And like I mentioned, we were able to, and usually it's very local, you know, we work with, you know, small groups locally. But now, because of the pandemic, we did put out an invitation through our Facebook page to encourage filmmakers. So we did end up with 45 filmmakers from, I think, three different continents. Each of those filmmakers delivered their films. And it was quite a process because as organizers, obviously we had to manage all of that and chase people up and so on and so forth, because we gave everyone a deadline and they had to work towards that deadline. And you know, it was very much people making whatever they had at hand, you know. So I think the majority of people did end up making the films on their phones. And I think that's something that we're seeing more and more of nowadays, with especially now that a lot of filmmaking is being put online, that people can just pick up a phone and film themselves. And we know that the platforms like TikTok, it's all done by phone. I don't think anyone uses a proper camera to film, or maybe some of the more professional ones do. But you know, there was a time when you really needed to have a proper camera in order to make any sort of film. And nowadays, anyone can pick up a camera. And you know, of those 45 filmmakers that we had, you know, there were definitely a number of those who had never made a film before. And at the same time, you know, there were a number of, you know, long-time filmmakers who took part as well. So that was quite interesting to see the variety of filmmakers, as well as, you know, the type of films that they were making during the lockdown. And we do have a Vimeo channel, which is Docma, D-O-C-M-A, if anyone is interested in having a look at those films. So to date, we've now made about 70, almost 80 films together, including 9 during lockdown.
That's great. That's really interesting. We'll hopefully we can have the link and then share it in the chat as well to share it to the audiences.
Absolutely, yeah. I can put it in the chat if you'd like.
Yeah, that would be great. And how about you, Mandy? What do you think about digital collaboration during this pandemic, and how it might maybe actually be an answer to more inclusive practices for filmmaking production?
Absolutely. I think this pandemic, although it creates several limitations to our work, but it also provides several opportunities to work together. For instance, the government, through the education ministry, starting from the lockdown, gives funds to almost 300 documentary filmmakers to create a 1 minute to 3 minutes documentary about the lockdown, what is happening around their home. And the result of the films was being screened in YouTube and on TV. And some of them, I heard, is going to be combined into an omnibus feature-length film, which will be very interesting to watch. And also, I have seen several collaborations between countries. For instance, a friend of mine from the Switzerland is doing a film, a documentary with 3 different directors from 3 different countries, where people are shooting their lockdown experience, and then it will be combined into one feature film. So things like that starts to emerge, and I think it's interesting to see how this kind of collaboration will stay after the pandemic is over, because it made a change in the way we work, and I think some of the changes will stay.
Yeah, I think that's definitely interesting. The fact that we could, even though we are distant, still find a way to collaborate and use like digital channels to to do those collaborations. I think many of you are probably aware that British Council, we really try to support the cultural and creative sectors in Indonesia by encouraging more like inclusive collaboration practices between both UK and Indonesian art sector. So in the past, we've been also trying to really introduce more inclusive approaches to the arts, to the mainstream art sector, including, inviting more disabled artists into arts practices in Indonesia, or working with arts organizations and seeing how they might be able to develop their work more inclusively. Originally, this program between British Council, Indocs, and Scottish Documentary Institute, we wanted to deliver it face-to-face, and we wanted to deliver a documentary film workshop early part of 2020. But because of the pandemic, it did not allow us to do this face-to-face. So we really tried to find a way to be able to still allow these collaborations to happen. And thus today we are actually launching the Indonesian Distanced Stories, which is going to be a fully digital, inclusive documentary filmmaking workshop. And this will commence starting next week on the 22nd of September. The workshop itself will be running roughly around 3 months, in which about 13 filmmakers from about 5 cities will be, from Indonesia, will be collaborating remotely and creating and producing about 6 completed short doc films. So in terms of the program, Indonesia Distanced Stories, how does it work actually, and what is Indocs's role, and what is Scottish Documentary Institute's role?
Well, for Indonesia Distanced Stories, we work together with Scottish Documentary Institute. We study their curriculum for the previous programs, but then when the pandemic starts, we have to change the program to suit the situation that we are currently having. That's why from the few days workshop, it extends to 3 months. And we don't have a physical workshop anymore. As before, it was a physical workshop. Everybody is in one place. But now we have it online with participants spreading in 5 different cities in Indonesia. So our role is we work together with SDI to create this new curriculum, and then we find and select participants for the workshop. We receive 122 applicants, and then 17 of these applicants were selected. But when the workshop changed into an online workshop for 3 months, several of the participants cannot make it because they have prior engagements. So now we have 13 participants. And then we also find and select local mentors to help the participants with the process. So aside from Noah and Anne, we will have 2 local mentors who will help the participants make their films. And also we will be the one managing all the technical requirements during the workshop.
Great. And how about you, Anne? You and Noe will also be involved in the workshop.
That's right. So Noe and I are going to be actually delivering the workshops from here in Scotland, although I think Noe is actually in Portugal at the moment with her mum. So she's going to be in Portugal, I'll be in Scotland, and we have a program all set out and ready to go. So we have a series of workshops where we go through the development process, and we begin by giving sort of master classes in various, we're talking about visual language, we're talking about sound design, we're talking about story, how to develop a story, what makes a good story. We also be talking about how to find people for your documentaries, how to work with those people. And then during those first few weeks, we'll be giving exercises, tasks, which are kind of just like mini, just to get people warmed up to using the camera, to start shooting things, to start thinking about how they're going to shoot, how they're going to work. Obviously, the people will be more limited, if they can't get out of their flats, out of their houses. I don't know if that's the case, if people are able to leave their homes. But obviously, if physical distancing is still in place, then it is going to be challenging. So that's part of the fun I think, in my opinion, like any time that you have a challenge, it pushes you further. It makes you more creative. It makes you think more about what you're going to do. So I think that it's unfortunate that obviously we can't be there, but at the same time, I think we kind of opened up the course, the seminar, to more people in more places, and also it's going to take longer, so people have more time to think about the films. They've got more time to work on them, and I think that's good, because I think we do usually run these workshops in a very intense manner, and it is really intense and it's fun, but I think maybe this way it's a bit better for everybody. Actually, it's more, I'm not going to say it's relaxing, because it is a lot of work, but I think it gives people more time to absorb all of the material, to really engage. I think that this model, I think, is really better in many ways.
If I can also add one thing, because this will happen online, so we open several sessions to observers, and this is a great opportunity for you everywhere in the world. If you want to see what the workshop is about, you can apply as an observer through our social media channels. We will announce it, and then you can come to the session and see what we're talking about. If this is not happen online, usually only people in Jakarta can be observers, but now people from all over Indonesia can come.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really fantastic, actually. It's really wonderful that it's just being able to open up to so many people. So even though the observers won't be taking part in the filmmaking, they can learn a lot.
So both of you were saying about how this program, even though there are already some selected young filmmakers participating in it, it's also still open for non-participants and for externals, that they could apply to be an observer. Besides that, what do you think is exciting about this program, or how do you think it differs from some of the existing workshops that both of you have delivered in the past through SDI or through Indocs?
Well, I think for Indocs, we have made several programs for filmmakers who are ready to jump into the professional documentary industry world. But this workshop, I think, is perfect for emerging filmmakers to really learn about the basics of documentary filmmaking. And we have been reading about the workshop for a long time, and we are really excited to bring it to Indonesia, because I think it will be perfect for people to learn and to develop and to cultivate their ideas and to turn it into short documentaries that are engaging and powerful.
Yeah, and how about you?
Yeah, I agree. I think that I've really enjoyed working on these stories workshops for many years. And as well, I have produced some of the short documentaries in a programme that runs here in Scotland called Bridging the Gap, which is a programme for emerging filmmakers to make their first, professional documentary. And so I think that it is that great opportunity for filmmakers who, maybe have made some shorts or, just interested in documentary, but want to push themselves to the next level and because the kind of documentary that we are interested in is creative documentary. It's not really, people often think of documentary as reportage, and that is not really the kind of documentary that we are hoping to develop here. We're developing more complex, layered, it's really a seminar in storytelling and how to develop those stories through the medium of documentary. It's not about reporting on news events or anything like that. So I think for maybe some people it might be a new medium, it's something they haven't really experienced before. I found my experience of working with emerging filmmakers is they have to start getting their head around what is a creative documentary or cinematic documentaries. They've become much more popular in the last few years. So we are seeing more of these types of documentaries in the cinema, obviously at film festivals, maybe on television. Netflix is, completely, they've started, doing so many documentaries, series as well as features as well. So that I think has opened up a lot of people's eyes to what the possibilities are with documentary.
Yes, so the fact that, it's targeted for emerging filmmakers, it's focusing more on the creative documentary filmmaking side of it, not quite the kind of reportage documentary films. But I also think one of the really interesting things is the fact that, we will be producing 6 films from scratch in less than 3 months, where everyone is far away from each other. So this is a really interesting maybe experiment to see how far collaboration can go and see, how we can really access films and reach out to new audiences. Even some of the participants as well come from different backgrounds, geographical regions, or even different types of disabilities as well. So I think it's quite interesting to see how and what kind of work might come out of this group of filmmakers.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that because we are going to have a larger group, but at the end of the day, everyone can contribute an idea, but not everyone's ideas will end up being made into the films. So that is a challenge in itself. But that's how these workshops work in the end, because we just don't really have the time to produce every single film. But the fact that people are distanced is going to add an extra challenge onto that and how people can work together. So I think we're all going to be learning something.
Yep.
Not just the participants.
Definitely. And I just wanted to touch on very quickly for non-participants as well. As Mindy mentioned, they could apply to attend some of the online public seminars as observers. But the British Council, SDI, and Indocs will also be developing a series of free resources and materials, or even like tips and tricks of documentary filmmaking. SDI also has a really great range of masterclass videos available for free on your website. And Indocs will also offer a wide range of free resources on the Indocs website. So there's a lot of resources and toolkits and a lot of information that actually non-participants can also access throughout the whole program, which hopefully will help support the documentary filmmaking industry further. So I think we will now start taking some questions. I see that there's been some questions in coming through the Q&A box, which are targeted to both of you. One of the first questions is, could you share your opinion about the growth of documentary filmmaking in Indonesia in the recent years? For instance, are there any particular themes that are gaining interest among young documentary filmmakers? Or how do you see the growth of women filmmakers in the recent years?
Well, I think it's a very exciting time for documentary filmmaking in Indonesia because, well, for Indocs, we have been doing several workshops like Docs by the Sea or If Then or Good Pitch for the past 4 years. And we see a rise in participations from young filmmakers. So we see there's this new excitement about the topics, and also in terms of themes, it has been varied greatly in the past few years. Themes like confronting our history is still very popular, but also themes like social justice, human interest stories, human rights, and conservation is also rising. And also the filmmakers are coming from all over Indonesia. So we cannot say that it's only Jakarta and Yogyakarta, for instance, which are quite known as the hub for filmmakers anymore. But now we see filmmakers from Papua, for instance. We see filmmakers from Aceh. We see filmmakers from Sulawesi, from Kalimantan. So it's a very exciting time. And the way they present their projects, I have to say, are also developing very nicely. I think they are getting better and better at it. And also the rise of women filmmakers are rising. We see more female documentary directors in Indonesia at the moment. So it is a very promising time. That's why we are so excited with this program, because we also see that this is a very good step for new filmmakers to create their first or second short film.
And thank you, Mandy. And how about you, Anne?
I'm not that, familiar with the documentary scene in Indonesia at the current time. Obviously, I'm aware of some filmmakers and some films about Indonesia that have happened in the past. So I can't say too much about that, I'm afraid.
How about the trends in Scotland and in the UK?
In filmmaking, yes, I mean, I think that there's certain themes that I think continue throughout time to prevail. I think personal stories are personally one of my favorite types of documentaries, when people have a story to tell about themselves or their families, and obviously other themes come into those films as well. We don't have a huge feature industry here in Scotland. It's in the documentary field. So it's kind of a bit sad in a way that we don't have, more feature documentaries coming out of Scotland. But I would say that the topics, the subject matters, the themes are quite diverse. I don't know if there's a trend at all, really. I wouldn't want to say that. Yeah.
And probably the last question before we wrap up. Someone has asked if there are any tips or advice for aspiring filmmakers to be productive and stay creative during the pandemic.
I think actually the pandemic offers many opportunities. This is a time for you, for all of us, to be able to reflect and actually to study, because a lot of resources online have opened up and free their resources, and you actually now have time to learn. For instance, the Scottish Documentary Institute have all these amazing videos, master classes that you can watch about documentary filmmaking. And also Sundance Collab is opening their subscription to free subscription, where you can also learn more about documentaries. So this is actually a time to step up your game and really learn something, and then you can come out of this a much better filmmaker.
Thank you. Any last comments before we wrap up? There seems to be someone who has also asked about your favorite documentary films that you can recommend to the audience.
Oh gosh, it's a really, really difficult one. I have so many favorite films. And some of them obviously are, you know, well-known documentaries that everybody has heard about probably. But one film that I do like is called Stories We Tell, which is a film by a Canadian filmmaker called Sarah Polley, who's also has starred in fiction films as well as made fiction films, but she made this documentary which really is about her family. Also some, you know, as these films often do, they uncover new information and surprising information, but it's an incredibly creative film and just very well told, and I really enjoyed it.
I think, yeah, I'm like Anne. It's very hard to choose one film because there are so many good documentary films. But there is one that I saw recently that has really touched me, which is Gunda by Viktor Kosakowski. I watched it in Berlin earlier this year. It's a very good observation about the nature of relationship between us and animals. And it's amazing how he shot it, how patient he is in shooting the animals. Well, for your information, in the film, we only see the animals and we see them as main characters. And then in the end, we realize that they are not very different from us after all. They also have emotions. They also have traumas. They also have character arc. So it's a very, I find it very, very, very good. And it's really memorable for me.
He's a fantastic, I love all of his films. I think if you want to, give yourself a masterclass in documentary filmmaking, you can just watch all of the films of Viktor Kosakowski. He's really fantastic. Yeah.
Yes, he is. He is. He's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the recommendations. It's definitely going to become useful for us because, you know, especially in Indonesia, we've just come into the second lockdown period. So we're in need of finding out new films. And, you know, this weekend, we can definitely check out the recommendations from Anne and Mandy as well. So thank you so much to both Anne and Mandy for being here with us today. It's been a really insightful conversation, seeing what the film industry has gone through for the past few months, and just hearing a lot of exciting new approaches and innovation for people to continue collaborating, regardless of, you know, their background or where they are or what type of disability that they may have. Hopefully, for those of you who have joined us today, have also found the session really interesting. And we will share more information through our socials about how other people can join some of the online public lectures as part of the Stories program. But before we come to an end, I'd like to ask those in attendance to help us by filling in the evaluation form. There is a URL coming up on the screen right here. We'll leave the room open up for the next few minutes so that you can fill in the surveys. I'd also like to remind you that we have several events coming up this week as part of the Arts and Culture Week of Culture Connects Us Volume 2. We will have a cooking show by the UK Embassy residence chef tomorrow afternoon, a poetry slam on Indigenous languages on Saturday, which I may add, you can also submit your own poems to be recited at the event. And lastly, as our closing event for Culture Connects Us, on Sunday, we will have a mini performance of Trace the Thread, a collaboration by Theatre Nanog from Wales and performance artists Abdi Karya and Safira Amorita from Makassar, followed by an artist talk. You don't want to miss any of these events, so please save the dates and register yourself for these events through our website. Once again, we hope this has been a very insightful session for you all, and we hope to meet you again either in person or virtually in the near future. Thank you so much and have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks very much.